Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Russ Conway, and tonight I'm here because HTV have honored me by deciding to do an hour's program on my life here in this city of Bristol, where I was born and raised. I have some guests for you, some with us here in the studio, some who will be filmed and you'll see later on. And we were going back in the 30 years I've been in show business.
He's a hell of a talent. And a lot of his talent has remained untapped. If he'd have been an American, God knows where he would have gone. You know what I mean?
Millions and millions of records he was selling, you know, that lovely honky-tonk style that was his own, that he invented.
I always think of Russ as kind of boy next door. In fact, that was the image that I tried to promote on records, that he was the kind of boy that lived next door, and you went in and said, oh, give us a tune, Russ. I mean, that to me sums him up.
I used to stand on this corner on Tuesday evenings, late Tuesday afternoons and Friday afternoons, waiting for my father, who was a commercial traveller in a sweet business. And he'd come home, especially on Fridays, and I'd be standing here waiting for him. Sometimes I used to walk halfway up Coronation Road here to get to him, so that I'd have a ride on the handlebars or on the bar before the law, which stops all late. But mainly we used to wait for him on Fridays for his samples, because he'd bring home his end of the week samples to start afresh on Monday. And of course, by Monday in the morning, with three boys, there were no living samples left. Well, we'd raided his case. It had all gone, and we were full of chocolate all over our mouths and everything. So we used to get a belting, a regular belting. You know, it was good fun. Dad was first and foremost a military man. So he brought us up with a certain amount of military discipline. He was in charge of the barracks at Devizes, where Ralph was born. And I think it's where he married Mother in 1915. His name was Herbert Stanford. Maybe that's why I am called Trevor Herbert. I don't know where Hubert comes from. Ralph has got Hubert. He's William Ralph Hubert Stanford. Philip is Philip Edwin. I don't know where Edwin comes from. We were first of all at the back bedroom, weren't we?
That's right, yeah.
And then we moved into the front.
Yes. You had that bedroom.
Yeah. Well,
I had the side bedroom.
what was it, the side bedroom where I used to hang the bell out?
Yeah.
And drop it on Mother?
Yeah.
And it was from that window then that we used to watch the nunnery.
Oh, yeah.
And be good on
good.
Sunday morning. Well, nice to come back again, isn't it? The front doesn't look too bad.
An awful lot, no.
That one 50 years ago, you and Philip used to sleep in here. And you were in there.
Indeed, yeah.
We had a double bed here. When we went into the old bedroom, our old bedroom, looking out of that window there, I remember mainly back to the early days of the war. We used to be able to watch all the dogfights over the city, the planes coming down, and at night, of course, it was beautifully horrendous to see the lights on the planes and watching the bombers come over and some of them being caught by the AK, the anti-aircraft fire. And I remember thinking, this is history we're watching here. But isn't it amazing how as you get older, everything becomes smaller? This used to be a very, very large room to me. It was large. It was large.
I had to take probably Philip and Trev with me most of the places I went because they were younger than I. We got on very well together, all three of us. Trevor and I got on more, I think, better because Philip was more of a loner. He used to go off, he was courting a girl as well. And Trevor was more, he and I were more together than anything else.
He was very protective towards me because I think he wanted to be, apart from the fact that Mother always used to say, take Trevor with you, but look after him, look after Trevor. And he always did. He was very protective. Except when I was tightrope walking on serrated edged railings down. And he gave me a little push. Go on, he said, go on a little further. And I slipped, you see, and I went down with my legs wide open. I've still got the scar to prove it. But I survived. You know, I survived and everything, all the bits and pieces worked throughout the years, fortunately. But it was a pretty traumatic experience, that was, that's all.
Both Mother and Father were musical themselves. Mother was a contralto. Father was a tenor, and they sang in local operatic societies and encouraged all three of us. Trevor just showed a natural talent.
My musical training, I suppose, started when the family found out I could naturally play the piano, which I'd showed around about the age of 4 or 5. And Mother wanted me to take lessons, and I remember she sent me to lessons. I forget the name of the lady up in the top of Stackpole Road. She sent me for lessons, and I hated it, you see. And I used to kick her. And I think I took one officially. And then I kept the money in my pocket and went to the pictures. That was the start of the official musical training. Most of it I picked up from Mother and watching her and listening to her play.
He would listen to a song on the radio or any tune and would go into the lounge. And within a moment or two, he would hear the tune being played purely from memory.
Dad had bought a marvelous new HMV record player, an automatic record player where the 78 RPM records went clonk, you know, and the arms went crank-de-crank, and there was a needle that we had to change practically every record or something, you see. And I automatically took to this, and I was able to, because the piano was in pitch with the machine, the radiogram, and I started playing the piano with recordings. I remember a tune called Jim Wouldn't Bring Me Any Pretty Flowers or something like that, and I found this interesting to play the melody with the left-hand thumb while sort of working harmonies into the right hand. One of the composers which I have admired, and I just want to play this tune because I've admired so much of his music, his film music, and his method of composing. I haven't been able to define it, but here it is. It's a Henry Mancini tune entitled Charade? Charade? Charade.
He won a scholarship to All Saints Choral School by his voice. From there on, of course, he was tied most of the time. Most days of the week, he would be at evensong or madrigals or weddings. And Mother, of course, fussed with him. She was very proud of him.
All Saints Choir School was very good for me musically, even though at the time I probably didn't like it all that much. There was a choir, and I was able to learn to read music. I won something there. I came first in the sight reading class. Here again, this amazes me, because later on in years come when I became a full-blown professional, I found it very difficult to sight read music. Maybe it was nerves, but I remember as a boy I won this prize for sight reading in the choir school.
I was dragged off on the occasional Sunday to All Saints Church to listen to him sing, particularly when he was singing solo. And I remember one occasion he was due to sing Ave Maria, and the church was absolutely packed. And Mother, of course, was a little bit tense. And all he was doing was typically, as he always was, here, there, and everywhere, even with his eyes, paying no attention. And Mother was nearly going completely desperate, thinking he was going to miss the key. And just without any warning, this beautiful soprano voice came in right on the key, and with no worry at all. That was the sort of attitude that he had towards it. He had plenty of confidence.
My mother had a photograph taken of me playing the organ at All Saints Church in Clifton. And from that, I got the urge to play organs in other churches. And I used to break into churches. Some of them were open, most of them were open. I probably just walked through the door, but broke into the organ. And I'd find the switch, and I'd switch on the organ. I did it at St. Mary's, Redcliffe. I did it at St. Nicholas. I did it at St. Paul's in Coronation Road. And I used to love making this sound. I thought, this enormous sound that little me is making, 4 or 5 manuals on each 4 or 5 keyboards. Saturday morning was sort of clean-up day, and in the afternoon, starting about 4 o'clock, we all went shopping in Bedminster. East Street, it was called. We usually ended up in Brian's, and it's still there, Brian's seafood shop. Half a quart of shrimp.
Half prawns, filled.
Prawns.
Right,
Filled.
yeah.
And a plate of prawns. But Dad would have winkles and cockles, and we'd have a plate of cockles each, and maybe a plate of winkles each. And then after that, nip round the corner to a chittling and tripe shop and pig's trotters. Now, the result of all the pig's trotters, the peanuts, the chocolate mints, the winkles and the cockles, sort of boiled up together, if you'll pardon the expression. And the next morning rebelled, you see, and waited until I got to church. And about halfway through the service, they wanted to make themselves known again.
As we grew up together, more or less. It was only the war that broke everything up. When Trevor went into the Navy and I went into the RAF. And then Mother dying, of course, and Father getting married again, literally broke up the home and broke up the family. We both went our own separate ways.
After Mother had died, I came back to Bristol looking for a job and not knowing where to settle. I used to go into the YMCA and just play the piano, where there were a lot of troops, of course, up in Colston Street, you see. In Bristol, there weren't a lot of pubs with pianos, at least not that I could play, because I was underage, anyway. It wasn't until I got in the Navy and then went to live in London that I played in pubs, and all the pubs in southeast London. And I don't think there's one I didn't play in that had a decent piano. working in pubs for so long, I did get a little tired of it, you know. And I wanted to, there is such a thing, I think, as the call of the sea, and I wanted to go back to sea. So I did 3 voyages on the Canton to the Far East, and then joined the Strathmore. When I joined the Royal Navy, I had 5 whole fingers on this hand. And then we had what we call work ship week, where you'd stop training to be a signalman, which I was training for, and they put you in all around the ship so you learn roughly how to clean a ship, or you become domesticated. You see. Dad had already done that, actually. He taught the 3 of us how to cook, how to darn our socks, how to wash our laundry and everything from this military training of his. But come workship week, in the old days, before the sliced loaf that changed the world, we used to have the long loads, you know, in the military, and this cutting machine, where one boy stood at the end turning the handle, and 2 feet away was another lad, on this occasion it was yours truly, taking the slices away from the blade, you see, and the blade going ka-chung, 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 going round and round. And suddenly I thought, oops, and I said, stop, and he said, what? And he went round again, you see. And unconsciously, I put my hand back again to take another slice of bread, and the blade took another slice of my finger. So there was, wicked, and I didn't feel a thing, you see. Anyway, we finally got back to England via Margate, where I went to have a fortune told. I said, Jeff, come on in and have a fortune told. He wouldn't have it, he doesn't believe in it. I went in, and this lady said, you're in show business. I said, no, I'm not. She said, yes, you are. I said, no, I'm not, I'm a merchant sailor. She said, well, then you're going to be in show business very, very soon. And I had no ambitions, no intentions at all. Anyway, we got back to Windsor, and Jeff and I broke up. Jeff lived in Windsor. I came up to London to get a job playing in a club, where I was seen and heard by Irving Davis, choreographer, who then brought in Norman Newell, who was to become my recording manager. And this was all within 4 weeks of the day in Margate. And literally 4 weeks after that day, I find myself slammed in the middle of show business, writing tunes, composing. I'd never done that in life, for Irving Davis, and being Norman Newell's audition pianist for Columbia Records. What about that?
He was introduced to me by one of our famous choreographers named Irving Davis in my capacity as a lyric writer, because I also write lyrics. I've had 2 careers. And he said he'd heard this boy playing certain tunes, and he thought that he would make a wonderful composer for me. So he brought him round to meet me, and I was absolutely in agreement with him. He writes wonderful melodies. And we became quite a successful songwriting team.
Norman helped me become a song plugger and introduced me to Teddy Holmes, the boss of Chappell's, who gave me a job there in song plugging, which was not an easy job at all. You were almost begging to give something away. You know, no, people mistrust you if you try and give away things, don't they? Anyway, it wasn't an easy job. You were given a song to plug, to make famous, try and get it into the hit parade. Through the song plugging, I was able to demonstrate the songs in the office. And many singers would come in and say, well, we've got new songs for the broadcast. One of them was Dennis Lotus, who's since become a firm, jolly good friend. And Dennis asked me if I'd become go out with a band.
My piano player that I had working with me at the time had gone back to Canada, and I was doing a concert with the Johnny Dankworth Band on a Sunday, and I needed a pianist to accompany me. So I said to Russ, would you like to play for me for the concert on Sunday? And he said, well, I don't know about that solo. He said, well, okay, I will.
So I went out on the Sunday, and he'd given me his music and his records, and I was able to pick up music easier by listening to them than reading the music, albeit this sight-reading prize that I got when I was a kid at All Saints wasn't sort of standing me in too much good stead at the time, because it was professional stuff, and I couldn't read chord symbols. You know, I could read the musical line, but I couldn't read chord symbols. I still find that very difficult.
We rehearsed and everything. He was fine. He couldn't read music, but he had a marvelous ear. And he phoned me on the Friday and said, Will Fife Jr.'s in town. Ask him to do it. I said, don't be ridiculous. If you don't do it now, you'll never do it. So he came along with me, and we did this concert, I think it was in Ipswich.
At the end of the show, I had made so many mistakes, so many, that I thought he'll never employ me again. And we were driving home, he was doing the driving, and there was a bit of silence for about the first 30 miles. Then he turned to me and said, I've got another concert next week with the Jack Parnell Orchestra. Would you like to do that? And for that, I shall always be grateful. More than grateful, but he knows how much. He's here with us tonight. My lovely good friend, Mr. Dennis Lotis.
Well.
So, we've worked with Dankworth and Parnell and the best, haven't we, you and I? But one of the songs which you used to sing, and I'd like you to sing it for me tonight, it was one of the best songs I think you ever sung. It's called I'm in the Mood for Love. Will you...
Are you really?
Yeah. But I am godfather to one of your sons.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You've godfather to one of my sons.
Thought I'd mention that. Okay. Go on.
In the mood for love, simply because you're near me. Funny, but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love. Heaven is in your bright as the stars we're under. Oh, is it any wonder that I'm in the mood for love? Why, stop to think of whether this little dream might fade. We put our hearts together. Now we are one. I'm not afraid. If there's a cloud above, if it should rain, well, let it. But for tonight, forget it. I'm in the mood for love. One and only Mr. Jeff Mount.
One day, as a record producer, I brought a composition called Roll the Carpet Up that had attracted some attention on a TV series. And the publisher said to me, would I like to make a piano record of this tune called Roll the Carpet Up? And fate plays such an important part in all our lives. Trevor, as he was known then, Trevor Stanford, came into the office and said, Norman, I've written a new tune. Would you like to hear it, now? I said, fine. So he sat down and played it. And it suddenly occurred to me that there was this very, very handsome boy with a tremendous smile and this lovely, warm personality sitting down playing the piano beautifully, because he plays like an orchestration. And I said to him, Terry, would you like to make a record? Well, I think he almost passed out when I said that, because he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I said, look, this tune has just come in. I played it to him, and of course, as he always does, he immediately sat down and played it at the piano.
And the only piano that was not locked in the #1 studio of EMI Abbey Road at that time was the upright honky-tonk. I played it on that, and Norman took a demo tape, played it to Teddy Holmes, and Teddy said, that's exactly the kind of sound we wanted. So then Jeff Love said to Norman, why not let Trev make the recording? Norman Newell didn't think Terry Stanford was the right name for a pop pianist, you know. I don't know what his reasoning was, but on whether he just liked to change everybody's name. Now, the name of the guy who was in charge of the steel band group that came into for this audition with this tune, his Christian name was Russ.
And I said, my favorite artist, my favorite singer of all time was a boy named Steve Conway, who was a very famous singer in about the early 50s.
And maybe out of this, Norman came up with Russ and Conway, and it became Russ Conway. Another thing about that recording is I remember there was another pianist there, it was Sid, I've forgotten his surname. But I've always had a funny feeling, there was only one piano, but there were two pianists. I've always had a funny feeling that had I been too nervous that day to make the record, Sid would have made it and could have well become Russ Conway.
So here is Russ Conway to play his own composition, which he wrote under a nom de plume. He's dead scared to write it under his own name. Here it is, Side Saddle.
My first memory of Trevor was he just had this hit with Side Saddle, and he heard that I wrote lyrics and that I might be interested in perhaps working with him. I don't know. Anyway, he appeared at my little flat in South Kensington at Reesmere's, and then Terry sat down at this piano, this upright, and produced this music. And he was playing away some of his new compositions, and leafed over the page, and there was this picture, rather like a passport picture, of a young sailor. I said, who's that then in your music? He said, oh, it's me, isn't it? We got to know each other very well after that. You know, we went around a lot together. Inside this strange on-top business of show business, he was one of the few people that I know that were absolutely genuine, straight, no monkey business.
That's the fella. And some leftovers from that was the week that was. And an international cabaret.
Yes, that's for us. Bill Cotton Jr. wanted a little short music spot filled in, and he remembered that I'd done something on 6.5 Special, which he was producing down in Cardiff a little while before. And so I moved into his father's show, the Billy Cotton Wakey Wakey Tavern show.
Now, the party piece is over. Now, what's the medley going to be, Russ?
Well, with your kind permission, sir, I would like to play a medley from the Hip Parade.
That's better. That's what I want from my artist. Respect.
I know what you want.
I heard that. What do I want?
You want me to play this medley from the Hip Parade, don't you?
Yeah.
Right.
Successful appearance, and the governor, old Bill, came round afterwards and said, we'd like to do another one next week. So let's have a little bit of chat. I said, yes, please.
You know, if you ask me, I've got too much I-diddle-diddle and not enough pom-pom.
It seemed as though I was falling into place in show business at the right time, in the right place, with the right team. And it was such a happy show, and the relationship to the viewer between Bill Cotton and Russ Conway was rather like a father and son image.
Please explain that to me. Well, it's easy to see. We're for BBC Three. Now, that's for us. They'll never do that without us.
Norman introduced me to many people that I was going to be an accompanist for before I became officially Russ Conway. One of whom was Dorothy Squires, very lovely, unpredictable, but lovely Dorothy Squires.
Dorothy Squires, of course, I still think was one of the major influences on Russ's life. And she was absolutely wonderful. She recognized his talent and actually was the very first person to ever present him. Before long, he had the Billy Cotton Band show, as we all know, then his own show, and smash hit records. Russ was so big in England that CBS, or Columbia Records as they were then, invited Russ and I to Hollywood and to New York to see whether they could do anything for him in the States. British records weren't very popular in the States, not like they are today. And we didn't manage to sell Russ over there, but we had wonderful times in Hollywood and in New York. And, of course, one of the first things we did was to visit Roger Moore and Dorothy Squires, because Dorothy was married to Roger at that time.
And I was cooking in the kitchen. Roger was serving drinks and one thing and another. And I heard a song. I thought, that's familiar. And I'd written this song, and he found it in the piano stool. And it was Say It With Flowers. So he said, who wrote that? So I said, I think I did. So, however, he said, when you come back to England, and I was due to come over to England, and Roger was going to make a picture in Zagreb. So I was due to come back to England in about 4 or 5 weeks' time. And, of course, when I arrived, Norman and Russ, because Norman was there on this promotion tour with Russ all over America, because he was very big at the time with a side saddle and one thing and another. So when I got back to England about 5 weeks later, we recorded this Say It With Flowers.
I don't know if you know Dorothy Squires, but she's like a human dynamo. And if she believes in something, my God, she'll do something for them or with her, whatever property that she's got. And she believed totally in Say It With Flowers. Russ recorded with her, and as we all know now, it was a smash hit.
When you want to say you're sorry,
Dennis never did that.
The lovely thing about his accompanying, it's a warmth he has. He feels the thing. I mean, you can get some of the most marvelous piano players who are just dreadful accompanists.
Altogether, there were about 17 top 20 records, consecutive top 20 records of Royal Event, Snow Coach, Lucky Five, Toy Balloons. Many of the party pops and the more party pops medleys came into the hit parade. It was a very, very exciting period, as you can imagine, not only for me, but for EMI, for Norman, Jeff Love, and everybody involved. I was thrilled to bits about it all. I'm a ham about show business anyway. You know, I love meeting fellow artists and getting their autographs. I've got my own autograph book at home. And, it's tremendous. No fooling about it. It's a great kick. I went through the status symbol period, I suppose, you know, with a large house, streams, stables, but no horses, tennis court, and I couldn't play tennis. 2 secretaries, 2 gardeners, 2 housekeepers, and the 3 cars. I had 1 Rolls Royce. She was the #1 chassis of the entire Silver Cloud Mark III group. Beautiful. They only made about 12 of them, I think. Come on, dear. Silver Lady. For Roulette, I received the very first silver disc that had ever been issued by a newspaper that was then the Record Mirror. It was Roulette, I think, that shifted Side Saddle out of the #1 spot.
I remember in Glasgow, we were at the Metropole, I think, or was it the Empire, one of those theatres there. And his first solo record had come out by that time. And I said to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, he's just made a record, and I'm going to leave him on the stage by himself, and he nearly died. And he said, well, for God's sake, make me smile. And I had to stand on the side of the stage to make him smile. He's got this lovely smile. When I found myself being asked by the floor manager or the producer
would you smile on the fourth bar? And I thought, this smile is becoming more important than the piano. Well, I can't think of where I am, whether I'm in the fourth bar, well, at the same time the brain's coping with 3,000 notes in those 4 bars or something. You know what I mean? And I was playing away and happy to do it, and pleased that I'm doing it correctly and I'm not fouling it up. And then I suddenly, oh, where's the fourth bar, for Christ's sake, you know, and do it, and I couldn't do that. Whereas right at the beginning, it was so spontaneously happy. Old Bill used to stand behind the camera and make faces at me, and my roadie, Mike Regan, used to have a script, and on the blank sides, he'd write funny little phrases or words or something, you see. And then when I looked up and saw there was a red light on the camera, and I knew that was where I had to look up and smile into, suddenly I'd see this filthy word just behind the lens, you see, and I'd go, way! And that's what came across, you know. And if anyone knew, there's blue-eyed Russ laughing at all this terrible business. It wasn't filthy words, it was just funny, and things that he knew would make me smile genuinely. But then I became totally conscious of this request to smile on the 4th bar, the 8th bar, the 16th bar. And the more I was asked, the more I froze. And gradually I pulled back from television.
Major star, headlined in all the theatres, but you could never catch his eyes on the stage because he's a giggler, you know, and he'd start, you don't have to say, if you change one word, like, you know, if it was, good evening, Mr. Conway, are we doing the song tonight, you know, and I say, hello, Puddinhead, how are you? And he'd roar laughing, or he'd say something back to me. So I was in sketches, and we were in these big musical numbers, and Russ and I used to do this tap dance routine to one of those songs that you hear now and then, dun, dun, dun. It was a perfect song for the setting where he was like a pub pianist in the East End of London. The show was a huge success, and it ran for 10 months, and Saturday afternoon, and I'm a sports nut, and I was watching the TV, and I thought, I'll just put the tannoy on to see where I am. Now, I was in the dressing gown, so I turned the tannoy on, and I hear ding, 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 and I went, chip! So I've opened the door and said, keep going. I've shouted up the corridor, and George Cooper, the stage doorman, screams at him, keep going, he's not ready. Well, I've tried to put the shirt on, I've got the trousers half on, I thought, forget the waistcoat, the hat, no socks, but I got the tap dancing shoes, and I ran up, and at the Palladium, there's a long corridor, and you go round to the stage, but there's also a back entrance for when you're coming off. And it's like a rule, you don't use it to go onto the stage, it's the well, I've opened this back door, and I ran right through the gauze, like in the Tom and Jerry cartoons. I went right through, and of course they're all waiting, the dancers and Russ, and they're all laughing, and I went right in, bold as brass, one of those songs that you hear now and then. But he was actually playing one of those songs that you think you forgot. Now I've gone in totally the wrong place, and they've all tried to follow me. All the chorus went wrong, he's roaring laughing, he falls off the piano laughing, and I'm in my glory. You know, wonderful way to go to work. It was such a happy atmosphere, and he contributed greatly to that.
That's another lovely thing about the Palladium. They make you feel like a star. Walk in for rehearsals, and they say, which dressing room are in? There's a key, Mr. Conway, and lovely George Cooper, who had to retire after a while. He was a lovely man. We used to gather around the stage door, particularly on bank holidays when the West End of London wasn't busy in the afternoons, you know. We go and we're all laughing and joking, and George, little George, North Country, he'd stand there and say, I don't know what you're all doing here, carrying on like this. What do you think it is, a place of entertainment or something? one of the strangest recordings, which we didn't think would get into the hit parade, but it did, was born of a tune I'd written for the theme tune of the second of the concerto series, which I did for EMI, for Norman Newell. Concerto for Dreamers started off as a tune with orchestra. It was a beautiful arrangement by Brian Fay. Jeff Love conducted the orchestra. And later on, I took the tune, the recording, to Lionel Bart.
He played me this great melody. He does compose a highly retentive melody, as it happens, which is basically simple. Again, like a man. But it's retentive. You hear one of his songs once and you know it. And I did a lyric for that piece. It was called Always You and Me. And Russ made a record of it where he just spoke the lyric against himself playing. And it's a very moving thing. It still stands up, I think.
You can multiply, or you can divide. But answers must agree that in the end, side by side, there's always you and me. You can take away 2 from 3, and you'll be left with 1. But if you take away you from me, I'll be left with none. I first wanted to get married back in 1943, just after I'd joined the Royal Navy, and I met this blonde wren. She was a platinum blonde wren from Scotland, Scotty, we called her. And, you know, it was a very young juvenile thing, and she was very young, and it didn't work, particularly when I came on my first leave and saw her sort of sat across the knees of about 6 other sailors in the same pub. So that sort of didn't work too well, didn't take off, in fact. There was another young lady who I won't say too much about because she's still alive. And I think we could have married had her father not said to her while I was working in pubs and playing the pianos. And he said to her, I'm not having a daughter of mine marrying a professional beggar, which sort of put the kibosh on that, and we parted company. Then I wanted to marry again way back in 1963 to 74, and she was a beautiful girl, Hazel, her name was. She was a lovely woman. And I went abroad. Unfortunately, she went into hospital for what appeared to be quite a minor thing and died while I was abroad. So I don't think it's anything more in the future. Janet, she's a very lovely girl, but I think here again the press and press agents made a lot more of that. I was going to, where was I going? In 63, I think I was off to South Africa. And she'd asked me if she could come to the airport, and I said, by all means, come on, you know, make it a half a day out. Now, the fans can be very, very glorious, and one or two of them can be problematical. There was one, it was quite humorous, although it was rather sad at the same time. I found her one night in my coal cellar, in my coal shed, if you don't mind. She didn't come out singing Mammy or anything like that, but she came out with a tray of tea, singing Tea for Two. Now, what do? You know, there's no answer to that sort of thing. But fortunately, there are not many waitresses who hide in coal sheds. Stardom is a man-made definition. It's a man-made word. You know, superstars come with, mainly with television, or if you sell 1 million records or something. If you sell 50,000 records, now you're a superstar. This necessity which is banged into everybody nowadays, you must be top of the hit rate, top of the hit rate, top of the hit rate. You don't have to be number one in the hit rate. You have to be confident of what you can do, know that you can do it, and don't try and exceed your limits. Don't go outside it. Then, if you know you've got an audience, then I believe it's your job. It's your duty. If you've got the talent, it's your job to go out and give it back. It's getting more like it now, isn't it? Right, I want 2, 3, 4.
Russ, in his early days, although I think he was very proud to be Russ Conway, I think sometimes it worried him a great deal. I may be wrong, and he may deny all this, but he's a very gentle person, as you know, and I think that he used to enjoy his going into pubs for a pint of beer and walking around the town, and you know, just generally taking life out the rest of us do. But as soon as he became a superstar, of course, he was recognized and worried by everybody, which is lovely, and it's a lovely thing to happen. And stars all need that, otherwise they wouldn't be a success.
I don't really like adulation. I love the applause, because that's appreciation of what you've done. But once you're off that stage, It strikes me as odd that there is so much adulation that can follow you around after you've done your job.
I could identify with his problem because in another way, I've had to, in my life, had to put out a facade all the time. And some of us can't really handle all that acclaim. And when you want to unwind and you have to still go out and present this person that you're not really, it's very difficult. And Terry, together with quite a few people I know, have problems handling that. They're usually the real people, which he's one of them.
I always think of Russ as kind of boy next door. In fact, that was the image that I tried to promote on records, that he was the kind of boy that lived next door, and you went in and said, oh, give us a tune, Russ. I mean, that to me sums him up. And I often wonder whether, in the long run, it wasn't a responsibility that I had, and whether one did the right thing. I don't know. Only Russ can tell me that. And I don't suppose he ever would.
Stardom, to me, was a showcase. I think all those years, it was a showcase. It was a... Can you survive it all? Can you get through it and survive? I bought myself an old sort of tarted up ambulance. You know, it was an old Vauxhall with the light on top and an ambulance. And the psychiatrist said to me later, he said, the way you were going, your next purchase would have been a retired hearse. Which I thought a lot about you. When I had a stroke in '65, Ralph had a factory down in Cleveland, and I thought if I could get away from show business for a while, it would help me.
Trevor phoned me one evening and said that he was rather up. Oh, I don't know. He wasn't feeling too well. Would I go up to London and fetch him back? And I did. We went up there and brought him back from Surrey. And he came down and sort of partook in the business, helped to run it, or at least he tried to. Got into the swing of things. And everybody down there liked him. He just wandered round and he used to say, Mr. Trevor this and Mr. Trevor that. But of course, they all went home and told all their friends they had Russ Conway down in the back. And he thought he was very good. And he's got a charming way with him anyway.
I think that I hadn't recovered enough. Things didn't come together again until the end of '66, '67. But then in '68 I became ill again, and it took a long, long time. I don't want to keep on about that, you know. But it took a long time, and if anyone I know has a stroke, and I always try to say to them, don't expect to get over it easily. And when you really think, when the first time you think you are over it, that's the dangerous period. That's when you really got to take it carefully and tighten up on yourself and be in strict control of yourself. Later on in March 1969, my housekeeper brought me up a newspaper, said there's some very sad news for you, Russ. And there it was on the front page. Billy Cotton had died the night before from a major heart attack. I was utterly shattered, far more so than I ever thought I would be. I didn't realize I was so fond of him there, you know. And I went to his funeral, came back home, and my secretary was there, and she'd put quite a few letters and things to be signed on my desk, and I said, well, leave those, I'll do them tomorrow morning. And the next thing I remember is 10 days later, and to this day I don't know what I did for those 10 days, but I was so shaken by Bill's death, I completely lost touch with sort of reality for a while, you know. I was very, very comfortably off back in the early 60s. By 1971, I'd gone broke, almost. I had to sell the house in Surrey, repay the mortgage. I came out with about an £850 profit, went into London, having defurnished a 14-room house in Surrey, tried to stack it, most of it, into the basement flat of a house in Notting Hill. Didn't succeed, so I sold everything and I sat tight in this 2-room basement flat for 2 or 3 years and then started all over again, which I didn't mind at all. I'd made a few mistakes and I'd learned a lot of lessons by then.
Mother was always confident about his success. And I remember after the occasion I quoted when I was taken to church to hear him sing a solo, I used to get a little bit fussed at times to think I was dragged off. But I always remember her words to me. She said, "One day, my son, you'll see his name in lights at the London Palladium." And of course her words came true. Regretfully, I think the tragedy was that she never lived to see it, because she would have been very proud of him. And I think in a way, that also has had a mark, not only on the three of us, but particularly on Trevor. And I feel at times some of his music, and particularly some of the nostalgic music, emanates from his thoughts and perhaps his feelings, like all three of us, of the loss of what was a wonderful mother. She was certainly our best friend.
I was only just 15 when she died, so I don't remember a lot of her. I don't suppose I really knew her as a person. But she pushed me like mad, musically. Anything I could do on stage, at the piano, at the organ, anything she pushed. Everything that she set out to do, I think, was basically about music. Happy music, always happiness. I started writing an autobiography way back in 1963, and I think I had a cheek to do it, but I was put up to it, by someone who wanted to ghost it more. And the tentative idea was then, and still is, Mother, was it worth it? Well, we've been through a lot, and, I don't know if there's anything yet to be squeezed out of the piano. I hope so. I think so. Yes, indeed. It was worth it. Every second. It is rather like as though my career is coming up to the second time around. I have no intention of retiring, not the way things are. And it's a compliment, tremendous compliment, that so many hundreds of thousands of people still come into my theatres. I'm working more now than I even did in about 1960. And we're talking nearly 30 years ago. It's a long time ago, that was. I enjoy doing what I do. I love playing the piano. I enjoy being here, to be able to, to be so lucky to be given the gift to play the piano. It's an instrument that anybody, children, can go to and just touch it, and it'll give them something back.
I don't think one word could really describe him, to be honest with you. A man of many moods. Some sadness there with him, but always in my company, or I in his. A good laugh, prankster, generous, and a gentleman.
I have a tremendous A for Russ as a friend, and without being the slightest bit facetious or egotistical, I certainly wouldn't have come on anybody's show other than Russ Conway, because I couldn't ever, financially, one could never, ever pay him back. And what is more, we have a camaraderie that is something very, very, very special.
I think that Russ could come back tomorrow in the charts. What I would like to see happen is somebody use him for a signature tune of a TV series. If he wrote a tune today, like he so easily can do, like China Tea or Side Saddle or Roulette, and it was used as a theme of a TV series with Russ's name at the end, music played by and written by Russ Conway, I'm quite certain that he would have a top 10 and be right back where he was. And believe me, I would love to record him again. I think that, he's got that kind of magic you don't find every day of the week.
wouldn't say this to his face, but he's always been a very, very good chap. He's one of the best, brother or not. He really is good, and I love him.
Right. And as far up to date as I could get was to write a new tune, although alluding to the past. So here it is, and I called it A Long Time Ago.